I'm so excited I finally get the glamorous flags.
And they match with your jacket,
Yeah.
relatively speaking. Okay, so tell us if this is a red flag or a green flag. You work for multiple clients, but the employer controls your workflow.
It depends. So if you work for multiple clients through the employer, through the company, and the company controls your workflow, then that's absolutely a red flag, because it sounds like the company, you should be an employee, not an independent contractor, mostly because they control your workflow. Now, if you have multiple clients and those employers control your workflow, then it's a green flag, because if you're able to have multiple clients, even if they specifically control kind of what you do and the capacity of your contract with them, that could be okay, so long as the other aspects are made. Because if you're working multiple clients, you probably are not working full-time 8 to 5, and you have flexibility. And then the other issue, it would depend on what industry are you in versus what industry is the employer in.
Do you think it's helpful for people who work for multiple clients to have an independent contractor agreement that's written and signed? For example, they may be consultant, or just kind of go with the flow and sign a W-9 and I'll pay you per hour?
Oh, always have an agreement. Always have an agreement. Always have an attorney review the agreement, because the other thing you have to look out for when you have multiple clients, when you're working in an industry, is they could have NDAs. If you've learned information from one client that you could potentially use in your work with another client, you don't ever want those allegations coming at you if the two companies are competing with each other. So it's extremely important to have contracts in place.
Red flag or green flag? You're excluded from company meetings and communications despite doing similar work as employees.
I would say green flag. I think it's okay if you're excluded from company meetings, if you're not an employee of the company, if you're an independent contractor, even if you're doing similar work, the employer or the company has no obligation to include you in company meetings or internal company events.
Red flag or green flag? You're an independent contractor, but when you come to the office to do a couple hours of work, you're dressed in a mini skirt and as if you're going to a club showing all your goodies.
I think it depends. In some places of employment, maybe that is acceptable, depending on the dress code of the company, I guess it would say.
If it was in violation of the dress code of the company, should you have an independent contractor sign off on a dress code policy for the company?
You certainly don't have to, but the company could make expectations to you clear of what they expect you to dress like, and if it's professional attire, they absolutely have the right to do that.
Red flag or green flag? Have independent contractors review and sign off on their acknowledgement of the employee handbook that contains the terms and standards that the employees are bound by.
I would say probably green flag, because the employer has the duty to its employees to protect the employees, and a lot of times those handbooks or a lot of those policies will be relating to harassment, discrimination, retaliation. So employers could require their independent contractors to be bound by those policies. However, there are policies in those handbooks that contractors are not going to be bound by. Meal breaks, rest break requirements, overtime. So, if there are policies like that, it would be red flag. I would say if the employer is trying to get the contractor to sign off on a handbook in its entirety, it would probably be a red flag. They can't force them to be bound by all of their policies. But if there are specific policies that the employer wants the contractor to be bound by that are general, I think that would probably be okay.
Let's discuss this. I know it's a gray area, but what if you are a personal injury law firm with hundreds of attorneys and they get to choose whether they want to be independent contractors or W-2 employees? And if they choose to be independent contractors, you still expect them to be at the office almost every day. You give them your computer, all the software, and they have to be at the office X amount of days a week. Would that be a misclassification?
I would say probably. I know that a lot of law firms do this, but technically, if you are requiring your folks to be in office, if you are giving them your equipment, they're not using their own equipment, if you are controlling the type of work that they do, they should be an employee and not a contractor.